Welcome to another episode of Black Authors Matter TV, where we interview movers and shakers in the African American literature space. I'm actually a few seconds early. Now it's 7 o'clock exactly. And I'm Gwen Richardson. I'm your host for tonight. And my able co-host, Rhonda Lawson, Dr. Rhonda Lawson, I should say, she has a scheduling conflict, but she will be on a little bit later, and she'll be joining us when she is done with her presentation that she had to do online tonight. So I have a few housekeeping notes before we get started, but I just want to welcome everybody to the show. And if you are a first timer, we do, we interview, we exchange, you can ask questions and comments, put comments in the comments box in the chat. I normally have Rhonda doing that part of it, but since she's not here, I'm going to have to be doing a little going back and forth on my phone, checking the comments, because I always like to stay abreast of what people are saying when they join the show. Before we get started, I do have a few housekeeping notes. First, I want to let you all know that I have been saying we will soon be a podcast. Well, the show is now a podcast. Now, what we do, we just take the show in its entirety, and we are on different podcast platforms. So right now we're on Spotify, we're on Google, we're on Amazon, and their podcast platforms. And we're going to be adding some more as the weeks go by. So we're very excited about that. We also have a YouTube channel, and you can go to Black Authors Matter TV, just type that in if you want to look at the episodes for 2022 are there. Also, our episodes are always saved on our Facebook page in the archives for the videos. And registration for the National Black Book Festival is open. Early bird registration for authors. You only have to put down $50 by March 31st. After that, the price will go up. So you do want to get your registration, at least your deposits in as soon as possible, because we will sell out of space. Also, our Black Authors Matter TV award show is going to be May 17th. Tonight is the last night of interviews that will be included in the nomination process. And nomination votes begin on March 15th. So we'll be announcing that a couple more times before then. And the voting lasts from March 15th to March 31st. So there's no cost for voting. Just vote for your favorite interviews. And I think we have 14 categories this year. So a few more than we had last year. And we will have the show for the awards on May 17th. And finally, the Jerry Pinkney Children's Book Awards. That's a new award that we'll be bestowing to children's authors. That process has also begun. So if you go to jerrypinkneybookawards.com, all the details are there, and you can submit your information for your book if you would like to do so. So tonight, as for our lineup, we have Dr. Wendy Labatt, who's our award-winning entrepreneur and a business strategist. We have Sierra Kay, who's an award-winning suspense and thriller author. Then we have Valerie Wesley, who's been writing books for a long time. She's a best-selling mystery author. And Latorial Faison, she is an award-winning author and poet. So all of our authors tonight are award-winning authors in our lineup. So we're going to bring on Dr. Wendy Labatt. And while she's coming on, I do want to let her know that we had told her this by email, but we want to announce that Dr. Labatt is our 300th guest for this show. So from July 2020 until now, she is the 300th guest. And it's not that we've had some repeats. She is the 300th individual guest. So we're excited about celebrating you as our 300th guest for this show. We've interviewed lots and lots of people, and we welcome you to Black Authors Matter TV.
Well, thank you. I appreciate you having me. I'm so excited when I got the invitation. It was just right on time.
Okay. So what we want to do is your book is called the Financial Cures book series,
Mhm.
and you talk about financial health, and we can always use some tips and strategies on financial health. That's finances are a subject that trips up people and breaks up marriages. So,
You right.
finances that's in the top 2 or 3 things in a marriage. Being on one accord is important, but I'm going to let you talk about what you do with your financial cures. And you also are a business strategist. So just tell us about what you do. You call yourself a financial healer. Tell us about that.
Okay, well, do you want me to start with my story or just get into what I do?
It's up to you. You
Okay.
do what you think in the order that's best for you.
Okay, well,
That'll help us understand.
I'd like to start with my story because that's key. That's how the financial cures came into play.
Okay.
I started my entrepreneurial journey almost 4 decades ago. I was about 2 years old back then, but I started an office equipment company with no business experience and very limited financial resources. And, it was a time, like I said, there was no social media, no internet. And the only thing you could do with a cell phone was make an expensive phone call. But my clients were corporate America and government agencies. And in order to be considered for the big contracts, you had to project a certain image, which meant having a brick and mortar office, employees, carry inventory, and all the overhead that goes with it. So I did that because I wanted the big contracts, but eventually, that got to be a little straining, but I finally got my first big contract. And, I was able to deliver, but the terms of my contract that my clients were supposed to pay me in net 10 days, but of course they were stretching out 30, 45, 60, 90 days. And even though I had the business on the books, I didn't have the money in the bank. So I kind of had anorexic income. That's what I like to call it.
I saw that. You have some good phraseology with anorexic income, obese debt. That's the truth. That's the truth. Yeah. But your story is not uncommon because I started, I was an entrepreneur from early on. I started my first business decades ago. And I did the.
So you were 2 as well, huh?
Yeah, I was 2 as well. And I had the office and I wanted to get contracts. There's something about people tell you need to get and I had government contracts. People tell you that, but then it's the part they don't tell you. The part they don't tell you is some of what you said. They might take 60 or 90 days to pay you. And in the meantime, you have employees, you have overhead, you have expenses, and you don't have cash flow if that's your main source of income for the company.
That's for sure. And it was, I was a rookie. I didn't know about business. So I'm like, okay, I was scared to say something because I'm like, I don't want them to take the business. But I talked to my mentor and I said, look, I got all this business. I'm having to pay my vendors, in net 10, net 15, net 30 days, but they're taking forever to pay me. So he said, look, what are the terms of the contract? I said, well, net 10. He said, well, you need to go and have a meeting and talk with them and make sure that they're aware, because a lot of times they're not aware, because he did business with, corporations and the government agencies. So he knew firsthand. And sure enough, when I met with them, the business comes through purchasing, but the accounts payables is who pays the bill. And sure enough, the purchasing people weren't aware that I wasn't getting paid. So they plugged, in the payables people to make sure, look, we need to pay her. She's a minority, a female-owned business, and, we need to get her straight. And that was a time when it really meant something to be minority or female-owned, because everybody, needed that status, or they needed the status to get the big contracts from the government or whoever they were trying to pursue business with. So sure enough, I'm like, okay. And then next thing I know, I'm getting paid on time, sometime even before time. So I said, okay, I got a little confidence going on. I know a little something. So I went to my vendors and said, look, I need better terms and pricing because I'm giving you a piece of the pie that you would normally get because they weren't female or minority owned companies. So they agreed and everybody, it was a mutually beneficial relationship for everyone. So we all, lived happily ever after for a while. But eventually I got out of that business because I remarried and wanted to start a family, and that was a little too taxing. So I ended up literally starting a tax preparation business, which was very lucrative and still is. And it was based on having, just consumer clients and small business clients. So I did that back, after 15 years in the office equipment company, and I'm still doing it. But in 2014, the Affordable Care Act mandated that you have health insurance, that everybody have it. So I expanded my business to include insurance and financial services because it all reconciled with your tax return. So I'm like, okay, if I'm going to do this, I needed to, buy all these products and services that I was selling my clients because I didn't want to be a hypocrite. And I had clients saying, okay, what do you have? Where's your money? And I can honestly say where it was. So in 2015, after leaving like a training meeting, one of my colleagues came up to me and he said, Wendy, I just came from the doctor last week and I've been diagnosed with kidney cancer. I'm like, wow, kidney cancer. I never heard of kidney cancer or anybody with kidney cancer. So I told him I'm going to pray for you. But jokingly, I said, well, I know you're going to clock some dollars because I knew the products that we sold, a kidney cancer diagnosis would bring in a lot of money for that person. And he said, Wendy, I don't have any of that stuff. He said, I barely got the minimum health insurance to meet the mandate. And I'm like, how are you going to be in this business and you don't have what you're selling? So it just confirmed that not wanting to be a hypocrite was the right move for me, because in 2017, I was diagnosed with an aggressive form of breast cancer. So I wanted, to nip it in the bud. So I'm like, okay, whatever we got to do, we're going to kick this cancer, we're going to conquer it. So sure enough, I, chose the most aggressive form of treatment. And that meant chemotherapy every 3 weeks for a year at a price tag of $67,000 every 3 weeks for a year. And, I had 5 surgeries. I had all the CAT scans, PET scans, MRIs, everything that you needed to have done to conquer the disease. And at the end of that period, when I totaled up all these bills that were coming in, it was almost $1.5 million worth of medical bills. But fortunately for me, because I did practice what I preached, my health insurance paid all of it. And I was like, thank you, Jesus, And then after I looked at all the supplemental coverages I had, I ended up getting multiple 6-figure tax-free financial shots in the arm. And I'm like, this is the financial cure for breast cancer. So that's how this whole thing came about. And I was like, okay, Lord, when I got, healthy, I'm like, I'm happy, I'm healthy, I'm wealthy, I'm in my comfort zone, I'm good. And he's like, no, I brought you out of this journey better than when you went in, so you can go on a crusade to empower other people to not let an injury or illness ruin them financially, to help people get their money in order. And like I said, find the financial cure for just their finances, or, improve their financial health. So that's how all this came about.
Okay, well, tell me about some of the terms that you have when you talk about the anorexic income, the obese debt, spending addictions, and other financial ills.
Well, anorexic income, most people can relate to that, because they know even if they've got money coming in, if they got jobs and stuff, if that money is going out faster than it's coming in, then they're not keeping it. So it's just like, an anorexic person, the money, their food is going out and their, body weight is, dwindling. So it's the same thing with your finances. Robert Kiyosaki says, it's not about how much money you make, but how much money you keep, how hard your money works for you, and how many generations you keep it for. So the obese debt is, people are familiar with that because you go into debt and you're not realizing how much you're in, debt until you start wanting to pay it off or start looking at the big picture or your overall financial health. So that's one area that, we focus on because people, they know, and then the spending addiction is another thing, because when people are saying, I can't afford this, I can't afford that, if they check their spending, that's where the money is. I give all my clients a spending challenge where they track their income, expenses, and their spending, because most people know, how much they make from their job. They know what their regular bills are, but they don't track eating out, buying that Starbucks coffee every day, just buying clothes or getting hair and nails done. I'm a proponent for getting your hair and nails done, but only when your money is right. If you're struggling, get that nail polish from, Dollar Tree or something and do your own nails, and get you a flat iron and do your own hair, whatever it is, until you get right. Don't make those priorities where you're struggling to pay your bills, your electricity bill, your phone bill. You need to, get that financial health in order. And, there's, like I said, a lot of focus on mental health and physical health, but very little emphasis on financial health. And people talk about financial literacy, but they confuse and conflate financial literacy with financial health, because financial literacy, you can be financially literate, but you can have poor, maybe even fatal financial health. So they're two different, thoughts. You need to know some things, but just because you know them don't mean that it's happening in your life. So, that's where the distinction comes in, to play.
Right. You can know what you should do, but that doesn't mean you're doing it.
Yeah. Just like, you should eat right and exercise, but then when you go to the doctor and you got high blood pressure, diabetes, and you're 40 pounds overweight, that shows that you know what to do, but you're not doing it. So it's the same with your finances. People seem to, I guess, kind of let their guard down in a sense when you talk about the finances from a health perspective, financial health, because, people don't want to talk about finances. People don't want to face where they are financially, but you got to know. That's why I wrote my first book, Diagnose Your Financial Health, because you have to know where you are in order to know how to get to where you want to be.
Do you have a copy of your books with you? So we can see the cover. So when people go and look for the books, they can easily find them.
Now, this is the first book. I'm trying to do it. I got this virtual background.
No,
here.
I understand completely.
And then I've got book 2.
Put it right in front of your face. That's what I learned.
Oh,
put it right in front of your face. There you go.
All right. And this is book 2, Optimize Your Financial Health, because that's where you want to be. You want to optimize your financial health. You want to diagnose it to see where you are, and then you want to optimize it to get to where you want to be. So and then the next book coming out in the fall is Protect Your Financial Health. And my story is an excellent example of why you need to protect your financial health.
Okay. Now, you also are on the board of directors of a community development corporation called Zayn Hill. Is it related, connected with the church?
It is. It's my church is Zion Hill Baptist Church, and the what we call CDC is the 501c3 arm of the church. And we are trying to, eradicate homelessness. We've got, we provide apartments and affordable housing for people that, were homeless, were in shelters. We give them, gift cards to help them buy food or pay for their, utilities. And then we teach them how to become financially independent. So it's a whole process. It's not just giving, like they said, you don't want to just give a man a fish.
You want to teach
for a day. You want to teach him how to fish. And that's what we're trying to do.
Okay. Now, because the church I'm a member of has a community development corporation as well.
Okay.
they utilize it for, and it's for mostly for educational purposes.
Okay.
For children, they have a camp, they do tutoring. So they focus on that. But that's something that all of churches do. They expand their ministries into the community by way of a community development corporation. So that and continuing to do good works and meeting the needs of the people. That's the charge of the faith. So you also have been, well, name something that, a couple of common mistakes. You've already talked about some of it, but name a couple of common mistakes that people do with their finances.
Well, the first thing is they don't have the right mindset and they have a knowledge deficiency. You can't want a rich man's wealth and have a poor man's mentality. And that's what happens with a lot of people that win the lottery and some of these professional athletes. They get the money, but they don't have the mindset to match it. And then you got folks that, don't have the money and don't have the mindset, and they're going to end up staying right where they are. But then you got people that don't have the money, but do have the mindset, and then they learn how to work their way into their wealth or wherever they want to be financially. So that's one of the main mistakes, is people don't level up. They don't match their mindset with their goals. They match their mindset sometimes with where they are, but not where they want to be. And then I talk about 6 obstacles, but the next is not one of the, it is one of the, it's the last obstacle I talk about is taking action, because you can know everything. And we talked about it with, with the financial literacy, you can know everything, but if you don't do anything, it's like faith without works is dead. You're not going to get anywhere. So the difference between what you want and what you get is what you do. So if you do what you're supposed to do, then you'll get to where you're supposed to be. So those are the 2 main, I think, mistakes that people make, is not having the right mindset or matching their mindset with their goals and taking the action to do what it takes to get it done.
One thing about finances that's very important is our credit scores. And, it's almost like the system requires you to go into debt, because you can't even get a decent credit score unless you apply for credit. And then it's how you manage the credit. A lot of people fall into a trap of applying for too much credit. Then they run like with cars, they run the cards up to the limit, and then they pay the minimum, which means they'll never pay it off. So that's one thing that a lot of people, it's really almost like a trap, because if you don't apply for the credit, your credit score, you can't build a credit score without credit. So, and you can't buy anything without a credit score. You can't buy a car or a house, without a good credit score. And there's always somebody trying to get you to go in debt. Furniture, the furniture people, the appliance people, they always, when you come in, the first thing they want you to do is sign for some credit. And I have, I always pay cash for my furniture. If I have to get one piece at a time, I'd rather do that than be paying on a living room set or whatever for 5 years. And then by the time you pay it off, it's like you want another one almost. So.
Yeah. Well, people have to, and what I tell my clients is you have to have discipline. Now, and that means deciding what you want more over what you want now. Because if you got that discipline, and another thing I teach, I've got a course coming out now, is how to live the VIP life using points, rewards, and miles, where you, use your credit cards to pay your bills, accumulate those points. I just went to California, round trip, first class with points. It cost me $12, And then when I got to my destination, I was in a penthouse suite that didn't cost me anything because I had points, So you have to understand, again, that's where that knowledge deficiency comes into play. A lot of people don't know what to do or how to do it. If you want that furniture, you can get it on credit, but you got to pay it off in 30 days. You don't want to have,
Right.
accumulate interest. You have to understand how compound interest works, because you'll either pay it or you'll make it. And, like you talked about people, max out their credit card, paying the minimum. That's because they don't understand how it works. If you, use your credit card, you got to be willing to pay it off within the 30 days before the interest kicks in. And even if you have to, take 90 days, just don't let it go
right
to paying
months
the
and
minimum.
months and months and months and paying that minimum.
Mhm.
And one thing you can do to just double up on the minimum, the minimum is hardly anything toward the principal. It's mostly interest. So if you just double up on the minimum, you can tackle the actual principal. That's where the financial literacy comes in, because a lot of people don't understand compound interest. That's one of my passions, is about debt-free college, because the college loans are so crippling to people. Because when you're 18 and 19 and you sign on the dotted line for tens of thousands of dollars, you literally do not know what you're doing. You don't understand what it means. You think you're going to be making all this money when you get out of college. And you just don't understand. If you borrow $50,000, it'll take you forever to pay it back, unless you're aggressively paying it back. That's the only way. And most of the time, people don't do that, because when they get out, they have an apartment, they might have a car note, they have bills, so they don't have that much money they can apply toward the loan. And they just sit there and sit there and sit there. And it's like a mortgage without a house. A lot of these loan balances for college loans are really.
Hey, it is like buying a house. I mean,
yeah,
I've got two sons that graduated from Morehouse College, and that to where I could have bought a nice mansion. And then with my doctorate degree, I mean, like I said, it's ridiculous how the cost of tuition is. Back when I got my undergraduate degree, it was $600 a semester when I went to, a state college in California. I went to Fisk, a private HBCU, and it was like $2,200 a semester with room and board, which I thought was expensive back then. But when you look at it now, $2,200 ain't even gonna buy your books for a semester, let alone pay some tuition. So
it's true. The cost of higher
crazy.
education has gone up tremendously. My daughter went to undergraduate debt-free for out of state HBCU, but it was because I became the queen of debt-free college, and so it was financed with scholarships. You have to be very aggressive with it, but it's worth it in the long run. And she didn't realize the benefit of it until she was graduating, and all of her friends were wondering how they were going to start paying those loan bills. So tell us how we can, because we're at the end of our time. Tell us how, it goes by really fast. Dr. Wendy, tell the viewers how they can reach out to you and how they can get your books, so they too can be financially literate and aggressive with their goals.
Well, I've got something even better. I've got a gift for your audience.
Okay.
I want everybody to get my free guide to 6 ways to stop hemorrhaging money. And if you text the word guide, GUIDE, to 770-796-4944. That's guides, GUIDE, to 770-796-4944. You'll get my free guide on 6 ways to stop hemorrhaging money. And then it'll tell them how they can get my books and everything. My books are available at Amazon, wherever, books are sold. So that's an easy thing for them to find.
Well, thank you so much for your words of wisdom about finances. And see, if Dr. Rhonda was on, she would have put that in the chat. But can you give me that again? Then we're texting guide,
GUIDE.
Okay. And we're texting it to 770
796
796
4944. I guess I could have put that in the chat here.
In the
Let's see.
comments. Can you do
Yeah.
that? Can you put
Yeah,
in the
I'm doing
comments if
that.
you can log in on your phone? And then that way they'll be able to do that. And that is a free gift from Dr. Wendy Labatt. And she's going to help us all with our finances and being financially literate and responsible. So someone did it. Stephanie Burnham did it for us. So thank
Okay,
you,
good. 'Cause, you know,
Stephanie.
I'm kind of
And
slow.
also thank you, Mary. Mary did it too.
Okay,
So
thank you
that
guys.
my regular viewers are on it.
Okay, because I'm, technology is not my friend most of the time. So I appreciate your regular viewers. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm pretty good, but it's easier when Rhonda's on because she does she does all that where I can just focus on talking to the guests.
Mhm.
Thank you again, Dr. Wendy, and continued success with your finances and your career and everything. Thank you so much for being a guest on Black Authors Matter TV.
Yeah, thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
Okay. Now, we are it's time for our next guest, but before we bring on our next guest, what I'm going to do is give away 2 books. So I didn't talk about them, and I'm going to go off camera for 1 second because I don't want my back to be to you all. Okay, I'm back. We have 2 books to give away, and HarperCollins, who supports the show very frequently, has provided 2 advanced reading copies of some upcoming titles. So the first one is called Where the Children Take Us, How One Family Achieved the Unimaginable by Zayn Asher. And hopefully you all can see the cover. I have it on my face. And to get this book, what you need to do is, let's see, the author's parents, we always do trivia. So here's the trivia question. This book is called Where the Children Take Us. The author's name is Zayn Asher, and the author's parents are from which African country? So the first one to answer that question gets that book. Now, I also have a second book. This one is by actress and artist Janelle Monáe. It comes out in April, and it is a book of original stories that she wrote. I think some other people are in there too with some stories. So for this book, the first person to answer the question, name a movie that Janelle Monáe was in. First person to answer is the book. So without further ado, we're going to bring on our next guest. And our next guest is Sierra Kay. She has a series called Queen of the North Shore. Okay, Kay Larry won the book by Janelle Monáe. And because Kay did it first, it popped up first. So I was watching because I knew Rhonda wasn't here. And I don't know what happened to the guest. She went away. Maybe she'll log back on. So someone can still win the other book by Zayn Asher. They can win this book by the author's name is Zain, first name. Last name is Asher, Asher. And you have to name the author's parents are from which African country. Okay, Sierra Kay logged back on. I'm not sure what happened, but whoever answers that can get that particular book. So Sierra Kay, you're back. I didn't know what happened to you. You went away. So we want you to unmute so we can hear you. We can see you, but we can't.
Okay, can you hear me now?
Yes, yes. Okay. Welcome to Black Authors Matter TV. Thank you for being a guest on the show.
Thank you for having me. I'm really excited.
Okay, so we want to talk about before we move forward, I do
Mhm.
want to Mary Evans, you won the book by Zane Asher. So we'll send that to you, and you don't need to DM your address because we already have it. Because you win things all the time. Okay, so where's my, oh, here we are. I got chipped up a little bit um with my book giveaways, and my co-host is not with us yet, so she normally does a lot of things. So I'm doing double
Oh, you're
duty.
doing double duty.
I'm doing double
Okay.
duty. But you have a Queens of the Castle series. You also have 30 Days of Pleasure. I see that cover there. And
Yes.
you won several awards. So tell us about how you got started with writing books and what made you write in the genre that you write
I got started. I've always loved to write. So I was always writing regardless. I was writing poetry and just anything that came to mind, any opportunities that came. And, the more you're reading, the more you're like, I wonder if I can do this. This is something that, I can take seriously, put a whole book together, not just a short story and send that out, but, a full on fleshed out character. So I started reaching out to some people that I knew, and I was put in contact with Nelena Kai, who is a book
in?
coach. And so she helped walk me through the process. And I've been writing both with her and the tribe and independently ever since.
Oh, okay. I like your covers. They're real
Oh, thank
clean and simple. It's not too much going
yes.
on,
What's in
so
Creative Studios? I got to give JL a plug, but what's in Creative Studios?
okay. Okay, say the
Um,
name of the company again for the audience.
Woodson Creative Studios.
Okay, Woodson Creative Studios did your covers. Okay.
Mhm.
So they do book covers apparently for authors and probably other types of graphics too. So, but they look very
Absolutely.
clean. Did you give them the
Mhm.
concept, or did they just like you told them what the books were about and they came up with it? Did you tell them what you wanted on your cover and then they created it, or did they do
Well,
it like on their own creativity?
both of these are books that are part of series, and he did the covers for the whole series.
Okay.
So that's how those kind of work. So it's based on the series, but independently, he works with you on, you tell him what your book is about, you talk to him about what your ideas are. He reads the book and kind of figures out, a good cover and then gives you options from there. So he works in a very collaborative space, and he is just really, really talented.
Okay. So Queen of the North Shore, what is that book about? And
Mhm.
what does she do? What is the character, the main character? What's your main character's name? And what does she do?
So Solange Porter, she's actually a little bit of a genius. She does a little bit of everything, computer coding. Um, she has some patents in her name, but she kind of stays in the background, or she has for a number of years. And she let her husband sort of take the foreground because the company that they work for originally belonged to his uncle. So she was just like, you go ahead, that's your family company. Um, so you take the forefront. But then he dies. And then she
Her
finds
husband died.
her husband, Emerald, dies.
Okay.
And then she finds out that after he dies, that he has started talking about this technology that they developed, just something that they did for fun, but that he wanted to go ahead and bring it to market. But because of the nature of of the application, it was dangerous, and people are trying to kill her now, and they're coming after. It's called Fit for Duty. They're coming after the app and her.
Oh,
And
okay.
so,
Now,
yeah.
do you have a technical background? What, when you write about technology,
Mhm.
how much in the weeds do you get on the details of the technology, or is the storyline more about the people?
It's more about the people, but I do have a technology background. That's my day job. I'm a business and technology consultant.
Okay.
So I do understand, about app development, what's possible, what's not possible. I can't code it myself, but at least I have a framework to be able to speak from in that vein.
Oh, okay. All right. So this particular book is a suspense, the mystery type
Correct.
thriller
Yeah.
along those lines. Okay.
Yeah, I love the mystery, suspense, thrillers, things that go bump in the dark, things that'll make you have you checking your locks twice, all of that. That's what I like to write. And I actually got started. The first book, the first book I ever wrote wasn't in that genre. It was my second book where I've kind of found my voice, and that was called From Behind the Curtain. And that started with a conversation with some friends of mine. And we were talking about The Wizard of Oz and The Wiz and what would a contemporary version of that look like. And so I was like, let me try it. And that's when I wrote that, From Behind the Curtain. And I
Okay.
realized that's what I like to do. I like to write the mystery and suspense. And a lot of them are retellings of fairy tales, fables, and stories from our childhoods that I bring into a contemporary vein, metropolitan areas. And then they're just, because they're all dark, all of them. I mean, even Mother Goose, she's dark, and Grimm's fairy tales. You have the witches, everybody's killing everybody. They don't care if you're a kid or an adult, so there's a dark vein to a lot of the stories we knew as children. And so I put a contemporary spin on them for adult audiences.
Okay. Well, the Wizard of Oz came out in the 40s, I believe. It might have been even the 30s. And then the Wiz was in the 70s. So we may be due for a reboot. They're rebooting everything else.
Right. They just need to look, maybe I need to, that should be my next project, to write a script. I haven't started
Maybe
script writing
so. You never know, because everything now is very little that's original now. So a lot of rebooting going on. And
I know, I was just talking to my godson about Batman. I was like, well, how many Batman movies are we going to get? Because this is the same Batman.
The same Batman that was with Robin back in the day when they used to do a pow. They used to punch and they would have the word pow on the screen. That's what I'm saying. They didn't actually hit each other. It wasn't animated, it was people, but they would go pow and they would have the word pow on the screen.
Right. And it was fun. It was like, oh, pow, look. And then they go running across the room. It's like, okay.
Yeah, because my brothers, when they were little, they used to mimic that, and they would act like they were fighting, and they would say pow. They would they were real small doing this stuff. So Batman's been around a long time. A lot of things, there's nothing new under the sun. That's biblical, but a lot of this stuff is remade many times over. And even if it's about technology, a lot of storylines are common and repetitive, like, revenge, mistaken identity. There's different ones, but
but the same tropes you'll see
that might be a
repeated.
good idea for another screenwriting. Now the thing about the 30 Days of Pleasure cover that I really like is the black and white motif, or whatever that's called, and then there's a pop of color. That's really. Now, what is that book
and
about?
that's what
is that
book in that
like
series.
Erotica?
It is not. It is
okay.
Not. So it's mystery and suspense as well. And I know that's what you get from the 30 Days of Pleasure, but it's mystery and suspense. And that one is about a woman who is trying to move on with her life. She had went on an online dating app, found a guy, realized he wasn't the guy for her because, she caught him in the middle of a murder. So she said, you know what? We should just break up. We're done. She ran away. And so she's traveling, one, because she can, and two, also because she, wants to put some distance between them. She finds a basketball player and they start dating. But then the other guy, Tarek, is still in the background. And so now he's starting to stalk her in her new relationship. And so she has to figure out how to maneuver the way around that. And this was, so the Pleasure series, because I'm the third book in the Pleasure series, that is actually based on a book from Nalena Kai, Open Door Marriage. And so
Okay.
each author wrote a book, and they're all standalone books. So you don't have to read them in order, or you need, read one to understand everything that's going on, but the characters are the same throughout.
Oh, okay.
So yeah. So both of these are, like I said, they're part of series, but they're standalone books. So you could buy them independently. And then once you get hooked, buy the other books in the series.
Okay. All right then. So now you have won several awards, and tell us about some of the awards you won.
So In the Midst of Fire, which is another suspense novel that I won an award for, a Book Excellence Award for suspense. And so I was very proud of that one. That is very loosely based on Hansel and Gretel. So, like I said, I do retellings. And then I've also won a New Yorican short story slam. And it's a New Yorican cafe in New York, which is very popular. They have open mic poetries, story slams, and things like that. So I was on vacation. I was like, hey, I'm going to go up here and just see what's what. And that's what happened. I was like, hey, I'll take it. I'll take it.
Now, that's the third time I've heard about that. Is it a cafe?
New Yorican.
Yeah,
cafe.
New Yorican. I think someone last week or the week before talked about that.
Mm-hmm.
Is it in New York?
It's in New York.
Okay. All right. That somebody else was on and mentioned it. So, things have a way of connecting together. When you find out something new, a lot of times then you start hearing about it more times.
Mm-hmm. It kind of catches on, and now
I don't know what law that is, but it seems to be really, really common. Mm-hmm. So let us in on what you have coming up. What are your plans for the rest of this year in terms of writing?
So I have a book that I'm working on now. It does not have a release date yet, or a title, but it is based off of a Mother Goose, Peter Pumpkin Eater. So, because if you listen to the whole thing, most people just stop at Peter Pumpkin Eater, and then there's a Halloween costume and everybody's happy. But I was just like, y'all clearly didn't read all the way down, because he had a wife, he could not keep her, so he put her in a pumpkin shell, and there he kept her very well. Very well. So that's illegal. You can't be sitting here holding your wife hostage. You can't.
Most of those nursery rhymes, we don't really look at what they're really saying. It's but they rhyme, and it's easy to retell them.
Right, and you're just like, hey, and then I was like, he put in a pumpkin shell, and there he kept her very well.
So what kind of? So obviously they're not going to be putting her in a pumpkin shell, but you're going to have them putting her somewhere else. Yeah.
So he is gonna, he does kidnap people. Okay. So in my version, he kidnaps women every New Year's. He marries them, and then he disposes of them. So it's a recurring theme. Peter's a serial killer. So
that sounds like one of the episodes from one of the the Law and Order SVU or something like that.
Right. Absolutely.
Now, what made you fixate on the Mother Goose rhymes? Fixate is the wrong word, but focus. Mm-hmm. What made you zero in on those and do a twist on them? What led you down?
It's just something that I always enjoyed when I was growing up, Aesop's fables, mm-hmm. Fairy tales, mythology, all of that. I've just always enjoyed it. And so, as like you said, nothing is new. Mm-hmm. As I was figuring out what I wanted to do, I started with, a dare that I gave myself with The Wiz, creating From Behind the Curtain. So once that kind of worked out well, I was just like, well, let's keep this going. Then I did In the Midst of Fire. And like I said, I won the award for that. So I was like, why stop here? Just keep going. So it's just, things that interest me, and it's a challenge because then you have to look at it and say, okay, now how can I take this and make it contemporary? How can I take this and, just draw it out just from that snippet? What is the rest of the story? Who are the other characters? How can I build around this? So it's challenging to me, and I kind of enjoy that challenge. So a lot of times it's just, I wonder if, and then take it from there.
Okay, that's different. I hadn't heard anybody use that angle for creating a story, but that's really, really good. And it makes you kind of wonder, where did the Mother Goose who get
right
get the where did that come from?
Exactly, because
it originated
there are so many.
Those rhymes came from somewhere, and I grew up on
somewhere.
And my mom,
they came from, go ahead.
My mom was a daycare director, and when she got her degree after we were adults, after my siblings were adults. So, but her degree was in early childhood education, and she said part of what they learned was about the different nursery rhymes. And she was saying in her class that she took, she was like in her 50s, and her classmates were, like 18, 19, 20. And they didn't know the nursery rhymes. And she said she thought that was just really just odd. She knew all of them. She got an A in that class because she had been teaching them in the daycare for so long. She knew them all, and she said that she just thought that was kind of interesting.
So she set the curve. That's what your mother did. She set the curve. Those poor people didn't have a chance.
They didn't know. I guess their parents didn't tell them about it. I guess.
Right. I don't know, but it's working for me. So I can't say.
Some of our viewers are commenting. Janice Kearney said that's what we were putting in our children's minds, but we didn't see it that way, though. I mean, we didn't even think about violence or anything. It was just like a rhyme. We didn't even think about what we were saying.
Not at all.
Mary Evans, she said her mother exposed her to the Brothers Grimm and fairy tales. It's a great idea. I think that's really good. Now, have you done anything with Tony Bonita said they don't teach nursery rhymes anymore. Well, what are they teaching?
Little nothing, because they can't anymore, because somebody probably complained. They're like, this is kind of dark. We need to switch this up. So who knows? Who knows now?
Yeah, I don't know what they're learning. But to me, it's not something that's helpful. One thing about nursery rhymes, if children are happy and pleasant, they grow up to be happy and pleasant people.
Right.
And if you put too much heavy stuff on kids, that's not something for kids. You have to keep it light.
Right.
Because your childhood is so impactful. Really, adults are just big, big children. And the things that happen to them as kids, they're walking around carrying a lot of that stuff. I find that's, people hang on to things that happened to them when they were 12 or 10, and it was never resolved, or it's just better to just keep it light with kids, because life as an adult is heavy enough, and everyone should have a childhood that's fun and carefree, problem free, if possible. It's not always possible, but it's time for heavy stuff. You get a lot of heavy stuff.
Because I didn't question any of it as a child. As a child, I was like everybody else. I was just rhyming and bumping along.
I was just rhyming, like you're saying.
Right.
But you can. I think that's really an interesting take for an author to use that angle and take the dark side of it to create a story targeting adults. I think that's fun. So, Sierra, tell us how we can get copies of your books.
You can go on the various online retailers, and they're available. So Amazon, Barnes and Noble, Apple iBooks, Kobo,
Okay.
just wherever you want to go.
Okay, and
they're
then we just look
available.
for Sierra K.
Just look for Sierra K.
And on social media, is it Sierra K?
On Twitter, it's Sierra K1. Facebook is author Sierra K, and Instagram author Sierra K.
Okay, all right. Well, is there anything you want to tell the audience in closing?
No, thank you all for joining us. It's been a good time. I've enjoyed it, and I hope you go out and buy the books. I hope you enjoy them. I hope you review them. Reviews are always great, always
Reviews
welcome.
are important.
Exactly.
Having some reviews is better than not having any reviews, but having good
Absolutely.
reviews is better than having questionable or bad reviews. So just keep that in mind. My rule of thumb is this: if I can't give a book a 4 or 5, I don't review it. So I don't do a lot of reviews, and I've only done a negative review once, and it was fairly recently, and it was because this book was so hyped that I forced myself to finish it, and because I wanted to give an honest review, and I gave it a 2. That's the only time I've ever done that, because it was so hyped. And if I name the book, people would know it, but I won't. So anyway,
well, you just said reviews are important.
Reviews are
so
important.
Yeah, so please purchase the books, review the books, and then purchase the next one.
Well, thank you so much. And I
you.
look forward to hearing more about what you're doing. I think it's a very interesting angle. And for mystery readers, which I read mysteries, that's one of my genres I read, I'm gonna check the books out that you have.
Great, thank you.
One. I'll try to start with one and see how it goes.
Okay, I appreciate it.
All right, take care. Thank you so much for joining us on Black Authors Matter TV.
Thank you, everybody. Bye.
Okay, before we bring on our next guest, Valerie Wilson Wesley, I do want to make people aware of some books that I have gotten in. And also, I wanted to remind you all of the book club Kickback that we're doing with Rashonda Tate Billingsley. I got my book in, Miss Pearlie's Girls. This is the book we're going to be discussing on March 22nd, the March 22nd show from 8 to 9, the second half of the show. So all of you who haven't purchased the book, if you want to join us in the discussion, you don't have to be in a book club to participate, but you do have to be in a book club to be on the Zoom call with her directly. So you have time to read it. It's 3 weeks from now. We'll be discussing that book. And I wanted to bring 2 books that I got into your attention. I get books sometimes from people who've been on the show. This is one from a guest that was on recently. It's by Donna Clovis. It's called The Sounds of Black Forgiveness. I decided to order it. I have not read it yet, but I did decide to order it. So here it is. I have my copy. I got my copy in. And also, she has not been on the show yet, but this is my book club book. I'm in 2 book clubs, and this is one of them, Reckless. It's by Selena Montgomery. And for those of you all who don't know, Selena Montgomery is the pen name for Stacey Abrams. So one of my book clubs is reading this for our March book. And I haven't started it yet because I'm finishing up another book. I'm always reading. So, but I want to make you all aware that her books are available. She does romances and under her pen name, Selena Montgomery. And Dr. Rhonda is joining me. And welcome, Dr. Rhonda. We're glad for you to be on. I just finished with the second interview, and things are going smoothly so far. Our regular viewers are helping me with chat, so I appreciate it.
Okay. I'm about to bring the chaos now. I'm here now.
So our next guest, Tony Benita said it's a good read. She read it a few years ago. So I'm not sure which book, Tony, you were talking about. You can tell us which book you were referring to. So our next guest is Valerie Wilson Wesley.
All right.
And Valerie has been writing for many years. She has at least one pen name. She might have 2. And she just has lots of mysteries. So I've known Valerie for a long time. I don't think we've ever met. I don't recall. I can't remember. I meet so many people, I can't remember all of them. Have we ever met, Valerie?
Hi, how are you doing? It's good to see you.
Hi, how are you? Have we ever met face to face?
I'll tell you, years have go past at this point in my life so fast. I'm sure we probably have at some point, but it's good to see
I
you.
don't know if we have, but
You
good
know.
to see you and glad that you're
Good to
on
see you too.
as a guest on Black Authors Matter TV. Thanks for coming on.
Well, thank you, of course. I got your message. I was thrilled to get it. And again, so flattered to be invited. And, you know, it's so hard now to get to Texas. So that was, to be perfectly honest.
Where are you located?
I'm in New Jersey.
New Jersey. Okay,
Jersey.
that's a little bit.
So, but I think I, you know, but it's just a joy. Thank you. And I, you know, again, if it were not for Black Book Club, if it were not for Black women supporting us as writers, there would be no entry. There would be no excitement. So I'm just happy again. Thank you all. Thank you, Gwen, for reaching out there and making sure that our voice, or that we're always heard. Our words are always read.
Amen. Amen.
Well, it's exciting. We celebrated our 300th guest at the top of the show. Our first guest was the 300th guest we've had on the show.
Wow.
And we started the show July of 2020. So we've interviewed 300 people. And
That's fantastic.
Yeah, it's a lot of people. It doesn't feel like 300 people. But it has been. So you have a book that just came out last week, I believe.
Yes, and it's
A Fatal Glow.
A Fatal Glow. I don't know if you can, if I hold it up, I know if it makes or may not come.
We can see
I'm
it.
just gonna have to turn my heater off and have my room. Hold on.
Okay.
It's called A Fatal Glow, and
Okay.
it is the second book of my Odessa Jones series, which is a new series for me. It's a cozy, and I must say that it's a different kind of series from my Tamara Hale series, and I really enjoyed writing it. And I really must say it's you know, you go into a new series, you don't know if people are going to read it or enjoy it, because I'm used to one kind of series, but readers have been very excited about it and have been very supportive of it. And so I'm very pleased about that. So
What is this for you? What number?
well, I wrote 9 Tamara Hale mysteries, 8, not the 9th has not yet been published. This is the 3rd book of the of the Odessa Jones series, 2nd book of Odessa Jones series. I've written children's books as well, and 2 paranormal novels under the name Savannah Wells. So I've kind of danced from various subgenres and genres. I just like to write.
Well, I feel
that's the bottom line.
like we've been friends for years because I've read so many of your books.
Oh, thank you so much. I appreciate that.
The first book, interestingly enough, was Ain't Nobody's Business If I Do.
Oh, that's one of my favorite books.
And you know what's funny to me is I hated every last one of those characters. I wanted to fight all of them, but I all these years I've never forgotten that book. So that that's
that means a lot to me. You know, I think it's my favorite book because I had just finished a mystery. I forget, it may have been Easier to Kill. There was a violent scene at the end of the piece. And I don't, you know, then one thing about the PI mysteries is all, you know, there's guns, there's violence, there's cursing. Yeah. Anyway, I was so sick of these folks in this mystery. I just wanted to write a love story dealing with women basically my age. She was a little bit younger than me, and just love, you know, and fun and lust. And
yes,
Ain't Nobody's Business was born from that. And I must say, I completely enjoyed writing it.
I could tell it was a fun book, and that's why I said it was just interesting to me. Like I said, I wanted to fight every character in the book. But all
like Eva. I love Hutch. You know,
all these years I have not forgotten that story. And you know, I think that when an author hears a reader say that, I mean, I think that's amazing that that your story can stick with the person for so long.
Thank you very much. That means, like I said, people forget about those. It ain't nobody's business. And I, like I said, I think there was a couple of scenes in there that were shocking to my husband and my children. What? She writes this kind of stuff? Really?
They're
surprised.
mixing up the characters
And
with
they didn't,
you
they didn't
know.
say anything. It's like, oh, Mom, man. But you write the hardest scenes to write. The hardest scenes to write are sex scenes and scenes of violence. Give me a sex scene anytime to write, because they're you can drink a glass of wine, you can put in some, and you can write them. Violence scenes are hard, and it takes something out of you. And that's why when I went to Ain't Nobody's Business, it was like, thank God, these new types of people, a different world. But I must say one thing, a lot of readers didn't know that I'd written these paranormal novels. And When the Wind Whispers is When the Night Whispers, I think, is a paranormal under Savannah Wells, and that's a very good book. I think that interesting book, because it's really not. It's about mothers and daughters, and something that that all of us who have kids or have daughters in particular are dealing with. And that book, I think, is an interesting book for readers, because it's a different kind of book. It's a paranormal, but it's also under a different name, and a lot of readers didn't know that was me writing the book.
Wow.
And it's a beautiful cover. When the Night Whispers, one of the prettiest covers I've ever had.
Why did you I'm sorry to cut you off. I was just going to ask, why did you decide to write the Paranormals under Pinkney?
Well, that was the publisher's decision. They felt, and I'm just going to grab it if I could and just show it to you briefly.
Okay.
Oh yeah, so yes, please.
Because it's
Okay, yes, while you're
Absolutely
doing
gorgeous
that,
cover.
one of our viewers said Gwendolyn Hayes says she read Where Evil Sleeps in 2006.
Where Evil Sleeps, that was the third book of the Tamara Hale series, I think.
Okay.
And that was the one where she's in Jamaica, I think. But that was fun. I went to Jamaica to do some research on that book.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, that was fun.
Well,
Okay. You write these and you just kind of, every book brings a different challenge. Every book has different kinds of characters.
yes.
And,
Or
and
should.
you learn a little bit from each book.
Now, can you, show us the cover again.
Oh, okay. I like this book because it is different, and it is a gorgeous cover.
It is a beautiful
It
cover.
is beautiful.
And I think it's one of the prettiest covers I've had, When the Night Whispers. But it's also a very interesting book, and I would, if people don't know about it, it's a fun kind of read because it is so different. I don't think it's out of print yet. I think you can still get it. But that to me was, along with Ain't Nobody's Business, I thought was a really, again, one of my favorite books. And I have of the mysteries, there are, you have favorites, and then they're all very special in their own way. But when Ain't Nobody's Business, I thought was just a really, again, because it was a different book, and it also got an award from the National Black Caucus of the Library. I think it was I forget the name of it, but it was
ALA.
The Libraries Association, which really made me very proud. So that was
okay. That's wonderful. Now, can you explain something to me, because I really don't understand it. What is a cozy mystery? I see it. I see it on BookBub. It comes in because one of my options is mysteries, thrillers, so forth, and the cozy mystery come in. And what is it exactly?
Okay, there are certain cozies are different from I'll just maybe to just talk about what cozies always have. And to give you an example of a cozy, a perfect cozy would be Murder, She Wrote. In a small town, a person who's not a professional sleuth or a PI like Tamara was, or of course Odessa's a caterer and a real estate realtor. But cozies, there are certain things you don't have you don't have any cursing in cozies.
Okay.
You don't have there's no cozy, no cursing. You don't have any violence as such. I mean, there may be something maybe hit over the head with something, but you don't show the violence like you would, let's say, in a PI mystery. It takes place usually in a small setting with the characters who are come back, and and it's, in a sense, it's a cozy kind of book. I think during these times that have been so difficult for so many people, horrible times frankly, for so many of us. And I mean, we've all suffered or have family members who have just lost to COVID, and certainly in my case. And to go to a cozy is to just be comforted. It's a very gentle kind of book, and I think that's why. Yeah, it's like a tea cozy. You know, you put a cozy on a tea. It's like a cup of tea, and that's where the name comes from. It's a cozy.
So,
and I must say,
shorter books, as in maybe 50 to 60,000 words.
Well, it's not so much the words as it is the spirit of it.
Okay.
And it's like, and they are like full novels, but
okay.
I'm trying to think of, there are certain, they always have a pet, for example, and there's a whole slew of cozies. There are culinary cozies and pet cozies, and mine are considered, I go to 3 different, mine are kind of paranormal cozies with Odessa and her glimmers and her sixth sense. And there's also a pet in my cozy. And what was fun about writing Juniper, what was fun about putting the cat in was that we have a pet in our family, Junior, my grandson's pet, who's very much a part of the family. And it gave me a chance to write about Junior, which I didn't really have in the Tamara Hale mysteries. So cozies provide, there's always a pet, and people love pets.
There's always a pet.
Yeah,
there's always a cat or a pet.
A cat, pet, dog.
Okay, I didn't know if it was a pet.
Okay.
It's always a pet. Okay.
Always a pet.
Okay.
You better not.
I never read a cozy that I know
of.
So, I had never read a cozy because I didn't know what it was. So,
I'm going to write a cozy next. I'm going to write a cozy next.
They're comforting. And I think that in what's happened, people escape to them. It's like, again, Murder, She Wrote during the worst of times. It's this past year, and even now with this whole horror of what's going on in the country, in Ukraine. Cozies, people watch Murder, She Wrote was very popular because people just want to escape to a little Cabot Cove and people they know, and that's just be safe. You just want it. That's what a cozy provides people. And the narrator, in this case, Odessa Jones, is a very comforting kind of presence. And I think, and a lot of readers enjoy her as a character, and I do too. She's been interesting and fun to write, and and finding her voice she's quite different from Tamara. Like I was just today, for some reason, looking over one of my Tamara Hale novels. I think it was the first one. And the tone is very different. And I said, wow, if people stumble into these Tamara Hale novels from the cozies, they're going to be in for a shock because the language is so different. And Tamara's perspective is so different. She's much tougher than Odessa Jones. And so that too is a difference. But you write the books and you enjoy the characters you're writing about, and then you try something new. So, or not. But that's part of it.
Well, Tony Bonita said that sometimes the small town is the character. Joy Avery, Lacey Baker, Patricia Sargent write cozy.
Yeah. Small towns, in my case, it's a small town, Grovesville. It's not like Newark, which is a big city, and the other ones. And also it's in these cozies, it's her real estate office. She is a widow and her husband dropped dead. He's of an aneurysm. And it was something that it was a sudden death. And it just left her completely, first of all, not without a lot of resources, and also, of course, just unsure of herself in the world. And that's part of A Glimmer of Death, is dealing with that and her coping with her grief. And so I think and much of that is getting a job in this real estate agent, which is an odd place and an interesting place to work. But it is in a sense, a small town with characters who will come back and forth. And that's been kind of, and it gives me as a writer a chance to develop each of these characters within her own world or his own world. And certainly in A Glimmer of Death, you kind of lay the characters out. And in A Fatal Glow, I come back to these characters and you develop them more, and with different layers. And certainly I'm working on a new cozy, but they publishers, they come one after the other, these cozies. It's not like, it's a series.
So is it like romances in terms of?
Yes, it's that kind. It is, frankly, is that
right really quickly.
They sell them like romance.
Okay.
Yeah, they sell them. I mean, and I had finished a Glimmer of Death, and now I'm working on a new one, which is fine, frankly, at my age, because there's this ageism is a part of publishing too. And I'm happy at this point in my life to be having a contract to do new books in this particular era, in this particular subgenre that I enjoy. So I'm pleased, but they do expect a new book every year. You gotta have, because readers once they get into the series, they want to know what's happening.
Yeah. Now, when did you begin writing?
Period, or just?
When did you first become published? Let's put it that way.
Oh, okay. My first book was published in. I've published my first book, I think, was 1990, 92, 93, with a young adult novel called Where Do I Go From Here? 1995 was When Death Comes Stealing, which was my first Tamara Hale mystery.
I remember that one.
Mhm.
Yeah, and that was, when I was reading it again, I said, wow, this was, but I didn't really start. I was an editor at Essence at that point. I was, and so I was certainly working full time, but then I would come home at night and work. I had published with Wade Hudson a book of Black Heroes. We worked together, which is Afrobet's Book of Black Heroes, a really lovely book that I think is still in print. I know it's still in print. And so Wade and I we wrote that. He wrote it as we were co-writers on that, co-authors. But the first one was, I think, that was really of note was When Death Comes Stealing. And then after that, just almost one every year because readers were excited about it. And I was able ultimately to leave Essence. Susan Taylor, bless her heart, was the best boss you could ever wish for. At one point I was going in, it'd be 3 days a week, and then finally 2 days a week. And then it was like, I'm going to do this full time, which is what he said, okay, good luck. So it was really a great time for me as a writer. So I think that that was around 1995. So that was the first one. But that's a long time ago if you think about it.
It has been. I remember we carried your early. Well, we started Chrissy at the end of '98. So
Yeah.
shortly after that, we were carrying some of your work. I don't know which ones exactly, but I remember When Death Comes Stealing. So that must maybe we got your backlist books when we brought your books in. But
yeah, it's what's interesting now about having written, because I think I was 48 when I wrote When Death Comes Stealing, 46, 40, mid 40s, about the same age my daughters are now. And I think now what's happened is, because I did, in a sense, start publishing fairly late in my career, very late. A lot of the young writers who I know now who are writing these mysteries read When Death Comes Stealing when they were in high school, which was really touched me very deeply. So I remember writing, that was really important to me as a book. So I'm very pleased to have had that effect on some young mystery writers.
I think what's very amazing about you is that I read Essence magazine, I read your books when I was younger, and then I read your later books. It's like you have that name that no matter what part of the literary industry that the person is looking at, they're going to find you.
Thank you so much.
So much.
I pop up everywhere, I guess. At a certain age. Well, I don't mind saying I'm 74, which is no young chicken, but spring chicken, I guess.
You don't look 74, so you're doing
no, you don't.
Yeah, look, I feel 70. When I get up in the morning, I feel 74. But I'm still writing, and that's the important thing for me, is to write. Yeah. I think and also the children's books, which I really enjoy, because at certain periods of my life, I think about the Wilhelmina series, Wilhelmina Rules series, which I completely enjoy, which was really based upon my daughters when they were children. I don't know if you are acquainted with that series.
Oh yeah, we used to sell
was
that.
Just a charming kid,
We used to sell those books. I remember that one.
Kind of based on my daughter Nandi and on Timmy, on both of them really. But taking little things that happened to them and putting them in this series was always fun. But it's like so now I have children who read the Wilhelmina series, who have read it and go on now to the Tamara Hales, and then read the Tamara Hales, and hopefully we'll go on to other things. But it's good to have had that input for the Wilhelmina series. These were the first books that some children read, what they call chapter books. And some teachers some parents have said, it was her first chapter book, because there was chapter books, chapter 1, chapter 2, chapter 3. And many children enjoyed that. And that is a very good feeling to know that children have enjoyed them. What was funny though, was a little girl who lives down the street had discovered the Wilhelmina stories. And she assumed that Nandi, my daughter, had written them because I was my grandson's, I'm a grandma. She couldn't get in her mind this old lady was writing this young character's take on the world. It was very funny because she came by with little books and wanted my daughter to sign them. And I said, well, actually, these are my books. Oh, Mrs. Grandma Wesley. So
but you know, when you raise children, you know, child behavior.
Yeah,
you
they were
can.
fun, and I would, you know, they stopped, you know, publishing is such an odd, you know, they publish, they don't publish. And so, but I did enjoy writing those books. You know, you go and you write them and you hope that, you know, that they'll be around. I think they're now online through Amazon, but it's not the same as a picture book. It's not the same when kids can really pick them up and read them. But it's a good feeling to know that children do read them. And so that was always a good feeling.
So what is it that's your staying power? Because you said that you're having to write book after book after book. How do you find your ideas? How do you write these books that people want to keep reading?
Thank you. I think the main thing for me is, as a writer, is just listening to people. Just listening to people's reading other writers, for one thing. The key to writing is reading. I mean, just read as much as you can. And if I find sometimes I'm in the middle of a book and I'm having trouble, you know, getting, you know, I will read another writer and it'll remind me what I'm supposed to be doing. Barbara Neely, her Blanche on the Lamb books are really funny to read, fun to read, and a really classic writer.
I remember those Blanche books.
Oh, they're marvelous books. And just read them. And to me, they're like a reminder, you're supposed to be doing this, to find a particular aspect of writing. I like anyone you can read, you should read when you write, for me. And that's, you know, I like a lot of mystery writer. I like Louise Penny, I like Ruth Rendell, lots of Walter Mosley, of course. And all of these writers who you get something from them. It's like feeding yourself. And then for me, at reading newspaper, just reading ideas, getting idea from other people. I'm talking to people at parties, or I'm not much of a talker, you know, at a party. So at party, I basically listen to people and let people tell you their stories. And you'd be surprised what you learn from people and bits of things that have happened to them. And you take it, and then that becomes an idea, kind of a germ for a story. You don't lift it out completely, but you have just like an inspiration for something. I could take something, this idea, and do this with it. And that to me is really important. People are very interesting. And you know, as a writer, you always want to listen more than you talk, because that's where you learn.
Absolutely.
And you know, my husband is also a writer. He's a screenwriter and a playwright. And we would go to parties sometimes and just listen and sit there and then come home. What he said, did you hear that? You know? Oh, that's an interesting.
You are ear hustlers. That's what you're saying.
Yeah, in a sense, you are. You're listening, and that's where you find things. That's what you find, the germ of ideas. For me, dialogue, writing dialogue. To me, I love writing dialogue. Trying to listen to the way people talk and how they're able to, you know, and of course, dialogue is an important part of a character. Yeah. So that's much of it as well. So those are all things for me as a writer that are essential. Are all these things that, you know, that come into it. And, you know, for me, if I'm not writing, you know, which is why at this point I'm happy that I'm still doing it. But even if there was a period before I started the Cozies where I had written another Tamara Hale, which has not been published yet. And I said, well, I'm going to self-publish it, I was all ready to self-publish it. And then I got the contract for this. And of course, they don't want them to compete in the marketplace. So I'm not publishing that until later. But what was interesting was that I went back to a young adult novel that I had started some years ago. And the main thing is to just keep writing, because publishing has nothing to do with you as a writer. You have to keep writing. So was really enjoyed this young adult novel, was really enjoying getting into the characters again and writing it and revising it. And then I was approached about writing this. I said, yeah, you don't want to frankly pass up a paycheck. So you want to try to, to do it, to make a living as a writer. Not that much money, but it's still something. But I put that aside, and at some point I may go back to that. I find though, as I get older, it's harder. I can't do more than one novel at a time. I work on that, get it in, and then go back to something else if I want to.
Norman Gordon wants to know how you deal with writer's block.
Okay. The writer's block usually comes if you've reached a point where in a piece where something doesn't really make sense. There were two ways that I deal with it. One is going to sound a little bit hokey, but it's true. It's almost, I don't know if he or she knits, but if you knit, if you miss a stitch, you've got to go back to tear it out. If you're doing a sweater, back to where you missed that stitch, and that's where you have to start again. And that's the same with writer's block. Where did I miss that stitch? But if a block is really serious, what I will do sometimes, and this is going to sound hokey, but I will kind of at night before I go to sleep, I will ask myself how to get out of this. What does this character do? And oddly enough, it'll come to me. And when I sit down at the computer the next day, there are answers. I found a way out of it. I don't know whether it's my self-conscious or subconscious is working on it, but that seems to work for me sometimes. And I've done that in A Fatal Glow. I did that. I think it's like, hold it up again for those who want to see it. But for A Fatal Glow, it's a much more layered book, I think, than in a Glimmer of Death. There's lots of things happening in it. And I wasn't completely sure until midway through the book who the murderer was. It could have been somebody else. And even in the end, I'm vague about who did what, which I think is one of the strengths of the book. But I really had to figure it out. How does this happen? How is this? And then go back. And when you write a mystery, for me, I do a general outline, but sometimes you go back to other chapters. And because nothing's in stone. So if you decide, let's say in chapter 5, that this particular character is the murderer, you must go back to chapter 1 and give that character motivation.
Right.
So it's a matter of all the way, just like playing chess, all the way through. What happens in chapter 4 has to happen in chapter 2. So you go back and you adjust it, then you go back and you come back. And what you can't do as a mystery writer is at the end of the book, have somebody come out of the blue and be the murderer. That's just not done.
Oh, that makes me so upset. I'm glad
Yes, it does. It does. When the murderer is somebody you don't even care about, or you hadn't even heard of until the end. That's stupid.
Invested in the piece. And I think it's not fair to readers. Because they're part of a mystery, of the fun of mysteries. Is figuring out who did it.
Right.
And if you have to give clues, but at the same time, you have to do, if they're red herrings, and the clues can't be so obvious that you're going to know by the end of the piece that who did it. You have to, when you get one, kind of what you want for me, if it's at the end of the piece, a reader will say, how could it not have been this person? I should have seen that. I should have sensed that. I should have known it. And that, as you know, you've written the piece the book in such a way that there's red herrings and this could have done it, he could have done it, she could have done it. And I think in one of the Tamara Hales, I really didn't know until the end who did the piece. It was an earlier book with the mother or the daughter. I forget the name of the book, but I realized it was the daughter. I think the daughter killed him, but it was just, I wasn't completely sure until the end. But you adjust the writing of it. And that's what is fun about, for me, writing mysteries. But not everything is sure until the book is finished.
Well, I hope everybody was listening, because that was a jewel that you just dropped right there.
Thank you.
It was.
Nothing is written in cement. It's not brain surgery. Nothing can't be undone. You just go back and rewrite it. That's all.
Amen.
And it's all right. They say writing is not, it's always rewriting for me. And you always rewriting. Then you go back and you refine it. You make sure the words make sense. You make sure you're not redundant with stuff. You make sure, and you go back and you write it again. You rewrite. And finally, it's done. One thing you don't do is you don't edit and write in the same period. For example, if I'm writing, I don't revise during that period, because you don't get anything accomplished. Like right now, I'm writing the first chapter of my new book. And I realized I have to let it go and go to the second chapter, because I'll be working on that first chapter. for the next month, and I can't afford to do that because the book is due in the fall. But what I have found is leave it alone, go back, and then at the end after 4 chapters, go back and look at it again, and then find out where you are, because and that's part of it. So you don't want to revise and write. So let's say you write to page 10 or page 5, start at page 5 the next day and write 10 or write to 7 or 10, and then go back, write another 5 pages, and then go back and revise a whole chapter, then go to the next chapter. So let things, stay a little raggedy, and then revise after it's done.
Love it. Love it.
You'll never write. You'll never finish it. That's the problem. If you get too perfect, you never finish it.
That's true. They say perfection is the enemy of the good.
Yeah. And
'Cause,
writing is
you never finish. Well, we are at the end of our time, Valerie.
this has been such a
It went
pleasure.
by
Thank
so
you.
fast.
Really
But-
quickly.
Let people know how they can connect with you on social media or your website.
Okay. The website is ValerieWilsonWesley.com. I think it's https://
You don't need
or if you
that
just
part.
ValerieWilsonWesley.com or in the name, the website will come up. That's always the best way
Right.
to do it. And they can
Okay.
communicate me through the website with me directly on my email. So it goes to my email. And I
Okay.
also update my website in terms of things that I'm doing. And that's the best way, because that way I can communicate with people directly through the website and through my email once I get the emails from people, as we did, Gwen.
That's right. I did it. She sent me to her website. Well, thank you so much, Valerie, for being a guest on Black Authors Matter.
Oh,
TV.
thank you
And
so much for giving me the opportunity to talk, and to thank you again.
And
for inviting-
congratulations on your new release.
Thank you. Okay.
Thank you
Take
so
care,
much.
y'all.
Take care.
Have a great night.
Good night.
Good night. See you later.
Okay. Well, we are at the end of our show in terms of our last guest, not the end of the show, but
I'm gonna say what?
we have one more guest, and Rhonda, I was just playing with you, Rhonda, because you came on late.
I was about to say it wasn't that late.
No, we have our final guest tonight. And as she comes on, I do want to remind people about the book club Kickback. And this is the book we're reading, Rashada Tate Billingsley's new book, Miss Pearlie's Girls. And the book club Kickback is on March 22nd. So if the book isn't real thick, so if you get started, you should be able to finish. It's about 250 pages. So you should be able to finish by the time of the show. So our final guest is Latorial Faison, and she is an author and poet. And Latorial was supposed to be on a show last year, and she had to cancel for something happened. So we wanted to make sure she had an opportunity to be on. And I have been connected with Latorial for many years. Welcome to Black Authors Matter TV.
Thank you, Gwen. It's finally good to meet with you. Have a sit down.
Yeah, we've been connected for many years. I can't even remember exactly how. Seems like it preceded social media, but
It did. I remember it was like around 99, 2000, actually.
Yeah.
Wow.
So it's been 2 decades plus. So welcome to the show, and I see your book covers there behind you, and
Yeah, I have
you
all
are
of them there. The
a
latest one.
prolific poet, and just tell us about your poetry journey. And I know you've been published a lot. You've won awards for your poetry. Just tell us about how you got started with poetry and how you developed your themes that you want to focus on.
Okay. So, I started writing when I was a kid, just in general. I won my first writing contest as an 8th grader. It was an essay contest, and I took a creative writing class in high school. And so that was probably one of my favorite classes. And then I went on to college and At UVA, I majored in English, but didn't do a lot of like serious poetry writing. But I did take a poetry writing class there. And when I went on to graduate school, I went to Virginia Tech where Nikki Giovanni was. And that was where I first, she didn't teach me, but just, I don't know. I used to go to her events, but that was where I first really had poems published in a literary magazine. And, you know, for academic poets, that's kind of the way, you know, going through that avenue. But I did not major in creative writing at all. I was just a straight English major. And so around the time when you and I first met, that is where it all really came together. And actually, what made me get more into it was around the time when I met you, I was a stay-at-home mom because I was a young military wife. And we
Okay.
had our second son. And the birth of my second son just made me say, okay, I'm staying home. And so once I started staying home, you know, the poetry was something that I was doing. I think we had mostly email and we had some sort of internet back then. But I don't know if you remember this or not, but I started my own poetry site. It was called Poetically Speaking.
Yes, I do. I remember.
And
That's my.
I ran that site probably the entire time we lived in North Carolina, a good 3 years. And that is how I met you. And that is
Okay.
how I met like pretty much everybody else in the writing world. But I started that site and initially I would publish other people's poetry there. And then I would have a poet feature of the month. And so people started saying, well, why don't you publish your work? Because I was submitting to, just random places. And so that's where it all started. I took a collection of the things that I had been writing probably from graduate school, because in graduate school, I remember I wrote a poem about the Million Man March. It had happened. And then I wrote some other Black woman type poems. And around the time when you and I were meeting and connecting, I was, hooked up with a lot of other like ethnic Black websites. That was where I think I first met the author J.J. Murray, who's like a multicultural writer.
Mm-hmm.
And so he and I collaborated. He's actually used a poem or two in his books, in his romance novels. And then I met a poet by the name of Nathan Eshe out in California. But between Nathan and J.J. Murray, they helped me put together my first book, which you can see behind me was Secrets of My Soul. And so that was kind of like my playbook. So I did that one, and then I published Immaculate Perceptions. In those first two books, those were just kind of general poems about life, about religion, about God, about me, love poems, social justice poems. Everything was in those. It was just literally a general collection. But after those two, my mother-in-law, who was teaching at a college at the time, gave me the idea of writing poems that I could actually bring into classrooms. And I thought about it, you can't really take a lot of things into public school or K through 12 classrooms, depending on the subject matter. So that is what started the 28 Days of Poetry series. So I had this bright idea of writing a poem every day during Black History Month that year. And so I did it. I challenged myself to write a poem every single day, and I was publishing it on my website, and they were getting feedback. I'll never forget the very first poem that really took off, and it won a contest at one of the sites, and it was the Sounds of Blackness. And that poem is, wow, over 20 years old, but it is still making its rounds. And so that was kind of the signature poem for the first book. But in that book, I was like also writing biographical poems about African American people, Booker T. Washington, George Washington Carver, Harriet Tubman, Sojourner Truth, because I wanted to be able to go into schools and share. So even the 28 Days books, it has some biography poems, but it also has some free verse. It's just like just a multi collection of different styles. And so after that first year, I published that book in North Carolina. And then we moved on to Texas, and book 2 came out because the next year I challenged myself to write 28 more poems. And so that one came out, and then the third collection didn't come out until we had actually been stationed back in Virginia. And I don't know, I think between the three, the most popular of those three of that trilogy is book 1 and book book 3. The last book has a poem in it entitled "What is Black History," which is pretty popular. It's made its way around the internet too. And then sort of after that, I did a kids book with my sons. That's Kendall's golf lesson, which you can see. Then we moved to Korea and I did a book called Flesh. I did a book of love poems, which is actually behind me. But I did love poems because just about every poet out there has their own collection of love poems. So I got the idea in 2014 to do love poems because I've been with my husband since 10th grade. So I know love, right? So, and I am a romantic. So I had quite a few poems in that arena. But and then I published I Am Woman. Some of these books just came out of things that people asked me to do. For example, the book Flesh. It is a single long poem. It's sort of like Maya Angelou's Phenomenal Woman.
Mm-hmm.
So Flesh and I Am Woman are kind of that style. They're long poems. I had a friend that lives out in, I believe he's in Nevada or Arizona. He was putting together a sort of a mini movie or a documentary, and it was titled Flesh. And he had asked me if I could write a poem that could kind of go along with or be used in it. So after I wrote it, I'm like, wow, I could put this in a book. Same thing happened with I Am Woman. We were living overseas and a military organization asked me to be their guest speaker for Women's History Month. And wherever I go, whenever I speak, I like to bring a poem if I can. And so I had the idea of writing an I Am Woman poem that pretty much gave a biographical history and a chronology of all the important women, like from the beginning up until that time. And so that ended up being a long poem. So I put it in a book by itself. But Flesh and I Am Woman are also in what was my last collection, which is not on the screen behind me. This is my collection, Mother to Son. And this actually was put together around the time when Trayvon Martin was killed. Because when Trayvon Martin was killed, I was living overseas and I had 3 black boys. And I had to return to America with my 3 black boys, and 2 of them were teenagers. And I was literally not feeling good about it. After living overseas in a country where there are no guns. So this book, that's the title, of course, is a spinoff of Langston Hughes' Mother to Son. But all I was thinking about was black mothers and sons at the time. So this is kind of a compilation, a lot of social justice type poems in here. That's the last collection, and that's kind of where I've been since that moment in terms of my writing. Now, since then, that's the last book that I published, but I have a book right now that I'm shopping around, and the title of it is Mama Was a Negro Spiritual. That one deals with home and my grandmother and growing up, in the rural Virginia South. And so I'm shopping that one around. That title poem won the Tom Howard Poetry Prize a couple years ago. And so it was pretty huge. And I just started to bring poems into that whole theme. So I didn't do theme books before. I do more theme books probably with the 28 days and then the Mother to Son. But I have more theme book ideas on the way.
Okay, well, you encapsulate everything. You've lived in the places I've lived. So North Carolina, Virginia, and Texas.
I never met when I was in Texas either. I was living in Killeen and you in Houston, right?
Killeen's a long way. So
Where were you in Killeen?
We lived off of Stan Sluter Loop.
No, when?
2001 to 2004.
Okay, that was right after I left. I got there.
Deployed to Iraq in 2003. He was there for a year, when it was all starting. And when he came back, we left. But yeah, I enjoyed Killeen. It was just too far from home. But I really enjoyed it. I tell
people all the time, Killeen is like a best kept secret because, people don't want to go there because it's a small town. Mm-hmm. But when you get there, you realize people are having fun over there.
Right. That's right.
Yeah, it's a military town because just about everybody I know that will live there was in the military or married to somebody in the military or children of somebody in the military. Now, when you went to UVA, where'd you grow up?
So I grew up here in Southampton County, and everybody who knows anything about Nat Turner knows that's where it went down. So I was born and raised in Southampton County, which is pretty historic. We're known for more than Nat Turner. It's peanut country. We've got a couple of famous people from there, but that's where I grew up. It's rural. I'm currently living in Chesterfield County now, which is about an hour from where we grew up.
Okay, because I'm from Newport News, so.
Okay, so you're from the 757,
Yeah.
as the kids say now.
Yeah, yeah. My family's from Hillsborough and Mebane, North Carolina. My parents.
Okay.
Near Durham.
I haven't talked to you in a long time, so
yeah, it's been some years.
I've been busy. You've been busy.
Yes, but I don't generally I don't forget people. I don't forget people's names and or their books. Some people I forgot their names, but I remember their books. But I remembered everything. And plus, I think your children were going to college at the same time as my daughter.
Yep.
So we were talking about money for school and stuff like that at the same time.
You wrote that. Look, you wrote that great book that I was pushing out there.
Debt-free college.
Yeah.
And it was. I have a degree in it, not an actual like bachelor's.
Yeah.
But I really have a PhD in terms of experience. I'm telling you all about it.
That book was awesome. My first son went. We didn't pay a dime. He didn't stay, but we still didn't pay a dime. And then when my second son went, oh my goodness, the offers that he got. So you really gave me that push into getting that debt-free college. So I appreciate that. I have one more coming through.
One more coming. Well, keep it going because it's really like freedom for life. It frees your children for their lifetime. They don't have to be shackled by that debt. They can go forth and do things and not be under that albatross, have that albatross hanging on. Yeah. So I encourage everybody who can possibly do it to start at 10th grade looking into it. Don't wait till senior year, second semester. It's too late. It's too late. Yeah. You need to start around 10th grade because you need to understand what you have to do to make it happen. And but even if you are late, it's better to start than not start. Start wherever you are.
Don't wait for some rich man to come be the guest speaker at your college graduation and decide to pay
you. Right. Don't wait.
That's like roulette right there. You just wonder where he's gonna go next.
Right. Don't wait. So do you perform your poetry or do you just write it?
I read. I don't perform. I do read though. I do. Well, actually, I think I've done more readings virtually because virtually makes it convenient. Before that, I used to go and read. People, invited me. I wouldn't do a lot of out of town because I was raising kids and I was a military spouse. But I will be honest with you. The last 2 years, I've literally been remote. I've done more engagements because of the pandemic, and I've done things in Boston, New York, New Jersey, the southern states. I'm doing a reading in Louisiana this Thursday for the deltas out there. So I love it because I don't have to leave the house.
Yeah, but the virtual world has created some new opportunities. It really, we had to take a deep dive really quick and learn how to use the technology, but you can't beat it for convenience. And sometimes you don't need to be physically in a location for what
the problem with it is that it's so much easier to double and triple book yourself. You find yourself in front of the computer all the time, so you still have to pace yourself.
Well, I teach, and I've been teaching from home since we started. And so I'm in front of this computer all the time anyways. I teach 4 classes, a full load. Plus I was, going to school before the pandemic and I sort of just finished. So it's been a busy, busy time. But I was sitting here today and thinking of what my next book idea is going to be.
Have you come up with it? Have you come up with it? You don't have to share.
Oh, sure. No, I don't mind sharing because I just finished my dissertation and I wrote my dissertation on segregated education. And so I did a qualitative study and I was thinking because I've been listening to a lot of poets who have been doing like historical poems, a historical biography. For example, one of my favorite persons who write those kind of favorite authors who does that is a poet by the name of Marilyn Nelson, who lives, I believe, up in Connecticut. But Marilyn did the first book that I knew of that she did was called A Wreath for Emmett Till. It's a collection of poems. And that was sort of my first introduction into that kind of poetry where, like a whole collection, like a historical, poetic piece. And then she came out several years later, I believe, with Carver, A Life in Poems, about George Washington Carver. And so other poets are doing it, but those were my first two collections where I read. And so I'm thinking of doing that with these 16 participants that I just interviewed for my doctoral research. Now, I am going to do a book with the research, but I think I also want to do a poetry collection to capture that because, being a college instructor, I'm kind of seeing the paradigm shift. And I'm seeing what's happening, as we digitize everything in terms of, institutions are giving students more choice. And we're having to, in the classroom, I guess, come away from like assigning like the novel and assigning more short pieces. And so I think poetry is going to be really popular. And so I think that historical poetry, might be what I need to do next.
Interesting.
Actually, I think historical poetry would be beautiful because just as you said, people are learning in smaller doses now. So
Yeah.
to have a poem filled with history is powerful. So
Right.
yeah, I would read it.
And I mean, like these books here, 28 Days of Poetry, in a sense, it's historical poetry, but it's a little bit different. Many of those poems, they rhyme, they have rhythm. But I'm thinking in the sense of a historical prose poem that just, it's not like an entire book on a person's life, but it gives you an excerpt, with that old African American aesthetic to it. It's a poem. So you get to learn, say, about Langston Hughes or whoever I'm writing, or these 16 people. Segregated education is not something that we talk about a lot. And a lot of times when we talk about those old Black schools, we only talk about them in the sense of lack, because they were segregated, because they didn't have, the funding or the resources. But many of those schools, many of them were doing well in terms of educating Black students, which is something that I'm, delving more into with what's going on now with our schools fighting over critical race theory and culturally relevant teaching. So I feel like if we revisit those segregated education experiences and see how, students who were coming through one of the worst eras in America were going to Black school, being educated. They had the culturally relevant teaching because they had the Black teachers. And back then, everything was unified. You had school, community, and family. And they all worked. It was like a triumvirate. Everybody working together.
Yeah.
Right.
It was a village.
I'm
It
so
was the
glad that you said that because what I've seen too many times, we think that we're only supposed to glorify the struggle. We don't want to talk about the great things that have happened in our history. I mean, I guess they feel if we do that, we're sugarcoating, but there's nothing wrong with celebrating our wins.
Right.
Just because we're celebrating the struggle. So I'm really glad that you made that point.
Yeah.
Yeah, the challenge with teaching about schools from the past, segregated was always used as a negative term, something that you're talking about. But as a product of segregated schools, when I was young, it was wonderful. Because the teachers were awesome. They lived in our community with us. They didn't just, teaching wasn't just a job for them. It was a mission, it was a calling. They were they were building the leaders of the future. And I think because they didn't have all the tools, they went like overboard with extra stuff, you know, taking us on field trips to Black-owned businesses. They would never do that. That would never happen now. But we, you know, we went on a walking trip to a Black bank and got to see the vaults. Then we came back to the classroom and we did banking in the class, and we each we pretended, but it was, we opened our savings accounts in the class. Somebody was the banker, and I don't know how they did. I don't know how they thought of this stuff, but they they did extra things to make sure that we had now they have to do adulting and, life lessons and those kinds of lessons about just things, practical things you need to know. But we were taught those in the class.
So
our parents too.
Gwen, I'm gonna need you to put this interview on YouTube so that I can cite what you just said, because that's what I did this research looking for. I wanted to find out, what these students took away from that experience that poured into them, and that, that made them, that inspired them and encouraged them. And so those are the examples. And you're right. Those are the things that, and the other piece of it for African-American students is, I call it the Black experience that we left behind, And the title of my dissertation was The Missed Education of the Negro, MISSED. Because, I missed that, because those students, I mean, almost most of the people that I knew who were older than me, where I grew up, they came out of that school, and there was something about them. I thought they were a phenomenon. They spoke differently. They enunciated. They dressed well. They had this thing about them, this Black pride and this Black excellence. And we need that today. I mean, I know cultures evolve, but some of that we still need. And we can see that when we look out and we see our youth, and, there's nothing wrong with style and there's nothing wrong with fads, but we still need to embrace Black excellence, Black professionalism, and our kids need to know that.
Exactly. We don't have to glorify the struggle all the time. Let's embrace the excellence and the beauty that it is.
Right.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and it just this will be on YouTube, because we have a YouTube channel, Black Authors Matter TV. So it won't be uploaded to YouTube for a few days. But
I won't need it for a while.
Okay. So
but I love that example that you bring out. How those were the things that you could do, when you were in a Black school, and there was such
you had a lot more of latitude and freedom to do things. I mean, the teachers really control the class, and you didn't have the state. I don't know what. I just know they had the freedom to teach us, because I guess maybe the state didn't really care. You know what I mean? The state, they weren't.
Well, back then, if you went to a segregated school, more than likely you went to a school when the idea of even the government caring about a school was a struggle. Because I know when I was doing my research for this district, I mean, even the white schools, no one seemed to really care. All they really cared about was that the school had a building. But in terms of, everything else, it was just kind of like, I mean, not a lot of money was also going into it at the time,
Mm-hmm.
And
so there wasn't a lot of administration. There wasn't a layer of administration. I don't know where that came from. Maybe once the government got involved, you had to have that. But
regulations
we're 2 minutes from the end of our time. So I want to make sure people know how to reach you, get in touch with you, and how to get your works.
Okay. Well, I have a site. It's really outdated, but it's there and it serves a purpose. My website is latorialfaison.com. Doesn't change. You can find my bio there, most recent events that I'm doing. You can log on to my site. There's a blog of different types of poetry, African-American poetry, women's poetry, love poems, and probably the most famous blog on my site is for children, because teachers really go there and want to pull off those African-American history poems. I am
Okay.
also on social media. I'm on Facebook, I'm on Twitter, I'm on LinkedIn, so you can connect with me in any of those ways. My books are available at Barnes and Noble online as well as Amazon.com, and you can probably find them, elsewhere also.
Okay, well, Latoya, this has been really great. I'm glad I got a chance to talk to you. I don't know if we've ever done like a face-to-face.
We have we
I
talked
don't
on the
think we
phone,
have.
I
We
remember,
talked
but
on the
never
phone,
face to face.
but we've
Yeah.
never done a face-to-face. So thank you so much for being a guest on Black Authors Matter TV, and continued success with your poetry, and stay in touch.
Thanks, and good luck to you. I love all the work that you do with the Black Book Festival. I'm gonna make it to one
Okay.
eventually. But thanks.
Okay.
Good night to you both.
All right.
All right. Well,
Thank you.
thanks again. And
All
have
right,
a
you
good
have a good
evening.
one. All right, bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Okay, well, that is our show for this week. And the National Black Book Festival will be in person this year, October 20th through the 22nd. So if you're an author and you'd like to sign up to be a participating author with the table to sell your books and everything, participate, then go to the website and you can do that there. Rhonda, did you have any closing comments?
Well, sure. First of all, I'm sorry, but I'm not sorry I'm late because I'm sorry that I didn't get to meet the first two authors of the show, but I was a part of a wonderful panel discussion celebrating Black Children's Book Week. And
Okay. Oh, with the guest that we had?
yeah,
Was
well,
it
I was
Veronica?
yeah, I wasn't talking with the guest that we had. I was actually talking with one of the participants who had a panel discussion about the importance of early childhood reading. So I was
Okay.
I wasn't a panelist, I was the moderator for it. So it was a great discussion. So
Okay.
so that's the reason why I was a little late today. But I did also want to let everybody know that for months, for probably a year, I've been talking about a new renaissance, a celebration of African American fiction. And I am so happy to announce that the book is out. It is available on Amazon Kindle right now. The paperback is coming, but I want to congratulate every author, number of the authors I met right here on this show, who was a part of this event or a part of this book. We had a wonderful launch party, online launch party yesterday. Really fun getting to know the authors. There are just some amazing writers, and I'm proud to say that because of this book, a few of the authors became published authors for the very first time. And you cannot tell their book from anybody else's. The talent level is just amazing in this book. So I'm really looking forward to everybody getting out and reading it. Take a look at it. As I said, it's on Amazon Kindle. You can download it right now and check it out. You're gonna love the stories.
Okay, when will the paperback be out?
We're looking at the paperback being out in the next couple of weeks.
Okay, all right. Well, congratulations on the release of your book. And I hope to have another book soon. Well, not soon, but before the end of the year, I'm going to have at least one book. Hopefully
I've got
two.
the writing bug. I'm ready to write another book.
Yeah, talking to all these authors with all the stuff that they're doing and releasing, and I'm thinking about my characters when Valerie was talking about her characters. So I am working on it and hope to have something soon. And for those of you all who live in the Houston area, I will be at Deer Brook Mall tomorrow with two other authors, and we will be there for National Read Across America Day. And we'll have a whole exhibit area all day long in Deer Brook Mall. So if any of you all live in this area, feel free to come by. We'd love to see you. So that's it for this week. We will be back next Tuesday. And today was the last day for people who will be included in the nomination process for the Black Authors Matter TV Awards. The voting opens on March 15th for that. So that's it for tonight. I'm Gwen Richardson signing off.
And I'm Dr. Rhonda Lawson. Have a great night and a wonderful week.
We'll see you next Tuesday.
Bye-bye.